Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. It's Tuesday once again, and I'm joined by Ian Conroy and Lawrence Conley. We might also be joined by Liam Carrigan, all the way from Japan, to talk all things Celtic for the next hour. Gents, there's a European game on Thursday night. We will be looking back at the Hibs performance, and here is Liam to join in the fun. I'm going to ask you first, Ian, when you look back on the dominant display against Hibs, unable to break through and get that all-important goal. What do you make of the performance overall?
Well, I didn't see much of the game, to be honest, so a bit patchy, but I've read the reports and obviously, heard the stuff that you guys conveyed in the group chat and all that kind of stuff, so sort of eyewitness reports. I know obviously it seems like it was a better performance than it was against Kairat, but a little bit like that, more of the same. And I think my biggest frustration is, and despite the fact that there's a lot of positivity, and if we played that game maybe nine times out of 10, we would have won. That one time we still drew. You can't win every game. I understand that as well. But my frustration is the fact that whenever Brendan changes it, he's so rigid with the system. He'll go like for like in terms of his substitutions, rather than changing the formation a little bit. And I think that's because this is the third season in now. All of our opponents, they've just got to know how to play against that one system. Obviously, they've got to combat the players that are within that system. But I think that kind of entrepreneurial freedom that players used to have in bygone days has been really taken out of modern football. Why not? Like Quinny was saying that yesterday on the pod, and I totally agree with it. Change it, get two up front, try and get that goal. And because no matter what, if you change like for like in terms of the system, you change the personnel, but the structure is still the same. So they're defenders; they all know how to squeeze and to pack it out and to combat that. So if you change it a little bit and cause a bit of chaos, then you're gonna you might not get the result, but at least you've got you're just changing a little bit. And it's like I was thinking about an analogy. I like my analogies, and it's like fair enough with the car, right? If you've got a problem with your engine and the batteries, there's a problem with the battery. You take one battery out and you put another one in. You don't put two batteries in. I get that, but this is not the engine of a car. You've got a system, but within that you should have some artistic license. Players should have, they're footballers, and they should be able to sort of go and try and work things out themselves on the pitch as well, and try and, win their duels, all that kind of stuff, all the cliches. But so that's my biggest frustration. And I think if we start to do that, to be a bit more bold and maybe not starting out games that way, but certainly if we're struggling to score a goal. Kairat was the real sort of defining moment again when we could still be playing today and we still wouldn't have scored. So I think if we'd obviously had better players, the new signings in, that might have made a difference. But I certainly think, in extra time against Kairat, we should have gone, changed the system and just caused some chaos, but we didn't.
Yeah. By the way, Ian, I think sometimes when you talk like that, people think, oh, you don't know football, you're a dinosaur, football doesn't work like that anymore. I think that's nonsense. I actually think it's nonsense. So to take Hibs as an example, here's a team who have set up their defensive plan all week to play Celtic. They have studied the other sides who have managed to defend against Celtic. They've watched us draw nothing each twice against Kairat, nothing each against Rangers. And they've set out their stall. Now, bearing in mind, on the first day of the season against St Mirren, it was a very late goal that got us the win. Against Kilmarnock at Rugby Park, a very late goal that got us the win, a penalty kick that got us the win. So this is not new. And it just so happens at the weekend, we couldn't find a way. We're hitting the bar. We're scoring goals that are chopped off. I think there's a penalty shout in amongst that as well that I'm going to touch on when we get to the referees. But when it comes down to it, Lawrence, I agree with Ian. Sometimes the like-for-like changes are not enough because Hibs are already into their defensive rhythm. They're quite comfortable by that stage. Yes, they've got to be completely focused for the 95 minutes of the game. But, we're troubling them constantly and they're up to the challenge just by changing personnel at times. I feel it's just playing into what their plan is anyway, Lawrence. Do you think that we do have enough personality and enough character about us as a team to find a way on days like Saturday?
Normally we do. I think Ian he's looking better game by game. He could have scored 4, and he didn't. Is that down to sharpness? I'm kind of worried he's never been a prolific scorer. But if you create that amount of chances, you generally win the game. The game in general, I think it was kind of night and day from the Killian, St Mirren and Kairat performances. just because of the volume of chances that it created. The subs were a bit weird for me. You know, Tunisian boy should never come off. He looks as if he's going to create every time. And again, we've got to get Balikwisha up to speed. But get him up to speed when it's 1 or 2-0, not when he's your main danger man. He's creating most of the stuff. Don't bring him on then off at 0-0. You know, touching on the ref, you know, kind of 16 minutes in, he's warning Hibs for time wasting. Nobody booked for time wasting. I think it was 90 minutes before we get a foul. And it was that bad a foul, it had to be a yellow card. Other than that, I think the ref might have let it go. I think it's a stick-on penalty. The boy's arms, you know, he jumps up, his arms are away from his body. Not worth a VAR look. You know, should we change the formation? Yeah, I think it's the attacking options that we've been struggling. You'll see that in the goal scored column. You know, what's our options to bring on to? Who are we bringing on? You know, what are we changing to? I mean, within 4-3-3, we change. You know, you change throughout the game anyway. But getting another striker on, would we have tried Maida and Ian Etchell up front? Would we have think that's going to be the partnership?
Why not though, Lawrence? Why not try something different when we're knocking at the door all afternoon and we're hitting the bar and we're not going to score? It was no surprise that it was 0-0.
I would say, yeah, change it. Against Hibs, we're creating more than enough chances. It's the guys that we're not putting the ball in the back of the net. And is that down to Ian Etchell not being 100% fit yet? You know, he's never been. Was a keeper brilliant? I don't think the keeper was brilliant. You know, I think it's maybe we've let go of Kuhn, Kyogo, Maida's out of sorts. You know, some amount of goals come out of the team that haven't been replaced. You know,
Jota and Ida
have been replaced, and Ida as well. So you're looking, and that's a lot of goals to take out. And you look across the front players we've got. I don't think Ian Etchell's going to be particularly prolific. He hasn't been anywhere else. Tunisian boy, maybe Bala. You know, it's early. He's not been great, but you can see why we're not scoring goals.
Yes. No, well, obviously we've lost a lot of goals. Absolutely, we've lost a lot of goals, and that's a major concern when you don't replace those goals with quality. I'm going to bring in some of the comments before jumping over to Liam. Monty is feeling like Celtic are poking him with a stick right now. Keep going. We are talking, of course, another Celtic merch drop as the club continues to ignore the open letter. You may have received an email this morning promoting the latest Henrik Larsson range, and at the bottom of the email, as always, we have the banner right across the bottom of it, a club like no other.
Do you know what it is, mate? This is the misunderstanding of the business side. They've heard we need a goal scorer. I thought, we'll sort that. Larsson merch, and you're like, that's not quite where we need the goal scorer.
Well, obviously, the radar basically smells money. And I think that what needs to happen throughout this whole process of the uprising of the fans is that the Celtic board need to realise that we're fans. We are not customers. We're not something that you can squeeze and squeeze without having a relationship with them. There needs to be a customer relationship if you're going to behave like that. And there is no relationship. You hear stories from all over the world by clubs that don't have as much cash or revenue or fan base as Celtic, doing things with and for their fans that make the fans feel valued and welcome. There's another thing, because when you go up to Celtic Park and employees speak to you in a derogatory manner and with contempt, it doesn't make you feel welcome, which is really, really poor. Now, I'm going to bring this up before I come to Liam, because I know Liam can extend his memory back to the dark old days as well. But Jay Conley, Jay Larkin, I know it's a very different time and very different board, but it worked when we did it in the 90s. We are, of course, talking about the action of the 1990s. I'm going to point your attention to a short series of productions that we've been doing on the channel all around those times in the 1990s. Now, back in the day where it was the 20th anniversary of the takeover, wait a minute, the 25th anniversary of the takeover, we did a series of interviews with a lot of the people who were involved, and that's in fact how I met Jim Orr. Jim Orr was the man who was involved with a group of others in the Save Our Celts movement, and I met him for the first time. We spoke about that. We've done a range of really interesting interviews. And I obviously unearthed some unseen archive footage, the first part of which formed part 2, episode 2 of this 4-part series. Part 3's going out this week, and it's the timing couldn't be better, right? So I had to watch it back, guys. Remember Terry Cassidy. Remember the man, the first ever CEO of Celtic. The Celtic board realised they had no idea how to run a business. They didn't even have a business plan. The Celtic board had no business plan. And when Terry Cassidy was given the role of CEO, as I say, he was the first ever to hold that position at Celtic. And bizarrely enough, a very young Peter Lawwell was employed at that time at Celtic in 1990 until 1991 as a financial controller, working under Terry Cassidy. Anyway, we have the second rally, which took place at Shettleston Hall in Glasgow, and Terry Cassidy's the main attraction, if you could call him that, right? And basically, he's the guy that everybody's firing the questions to. There's a mobbed rally in Shettleston Halls. And alongside him, let me just check the lineup here, because I was looking at this morning. So, Willie Wilson was representing Save Ourselves. We then had the chair of the meeting, a certain Brendan O'Hara, who at that time was writing for Not the View, but you may know him as an MP now. He's also a director and producer of TV and film. Next to him was Peter Rafferty, who at the time was the chairman of the affiliation of CSCs. So basically he had the role, Lawrence, of our mutual friend Alan Horn, as Alan has now. The CSA, the Celtic Supporters Association, George Delaney, refused to attend both of these rallies. And on the very end was a wee guy called Professor Tom Carberry. And I'd never had the pleasure of hearing this chap speak before until now. He's a raconteur. Look him up, right? I think he passed in 2015. He's incredible, an incredible speaker. And all that footage is available. And we're putting it together for part 3, episode 3 of Saving Ourselves. But what strikes me is some of the stuff that Terry Cassidy comes away with is absolutely incredible. He says, we don't want to get into a situation where one man controls this football club. That's what he said. And I'm like, Nostradamus moment, right? We don't want to get into that situation. And then once it gets to Professor Tom Carberry, he says he comes up with 6 different ways to save Celtic. And one of them was to float the club as a public entity on the stock market. And he says, Celtic fans don't have the money for that. Seriously, tune in on Friday night, because obviously we now know it became the single most successful share issue in world football history when Fergus McCann floated the first share issue in 1995. But it's a step back in time, but there's quite a lot in that you look at and you think, wow, even though the board that we have now know how to make money, the board that we had back then didn't have a clue, a lot of the mistakes are being repeated, Liam. The only thing they have in their favour now is that we're a successful football club on the park and we've got loads of money in the bank. That's the only difference I can see.
Yeah, but unfortunately, when it comes to forcing change, that's a game changer. Because back then, I was having this argument actually with somebody last week who was saying, like, how did fans actually do anything to save the club? It was all Fergus. It was like, no, the fans knew that there was a certain number. If the attendance figure fell below that number, the bank would call in the loan and the old board were humped. That was the point. We had a specific strategy to oust that board. Now, we weren't exactly sure what was going to come next, and that was where the likes of, Fergus steps in and numerous others to get things back on track. But that was the plan. There was a set kind of pathway towards getting the old board out. We don't have that now. So all we can really do is agitate and agitate and agitate until eventually change has to come.
The thing for me, Liam, what I was saying there in terms of the differences is I'm talking about the relationship between the board and the fans. Obviously, the club is night and day when you compare them, but the two, well, there was 3 big talking points. Lawrence, you'll remember all this. You'll remember all this kicking off. The 3 big talking points was A, how can we afford to keep Paul McStay? B,
remember the jersey into the jungle?
I remember it well after Hibs game. How do we communicate better with the fans? And that is why Save Our Celts, started up, because they were unhappy with the Celtic Supporters Association, right? So they set up an independent Celtic Supporters Association called Save Our Celts, because they wanted fans to be communicated with, engaged with, and valued. So this was the second one: communication. How to keep our best players, communication, and how are we going to improve the stadium? And I'm thinking, right, all these years later, they're still on the table. They're still talking points, aren't they? Communication, how to keep our best players, and how to improve the stadium. I was sent a tremendous wee video, because I've got to say, I don't think I was aware of just how bad the stadium was looking until I started doing that wander around Paradise, which I did every week for about a year, right? And then I flipped that, and we now do This Is Acsom on a Friday night, because it's far more comfortable in a nice wee studio than it is in the wind and the rain on a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. However, we'll go back to the wonder someday. But when I was walking around, I used to say to you guys quite regularly, stadium looks really tired. It really needs a lot of work. And I was going around every week, and it was getting worse, and a wee bit more graffiti was appearing, and I didn't see any work whatsoever. I got sent a brilliant wee video from Steve-O from the Celtic World Order. He had done something similar. He was in and around the park. So he got his phone out, and he basically walked around, and he was looking at all the different aspects of the ground that were looking terrible, looking tired. The banners missing from the side of the stadium. And then he found where they were. They were rolled up next to the trash and all this kind of stuff. It's terrible. It really is terrible. And we call it Paradise, guys. And we invite teams from all over Europe now to come to this stadium, and we call it Paradise. And we sell that dream, a club like no other. Our stadium is a disgrace, Ian, as it stands right now. It's an absolute disgrace. I've been getting sent pictures, right, from people who are saying, right, see where I stand in the stadium. We go down, and we've noticed this, and it's been like this since such and such. There's a TV which is stuck on the Celtic versus Manchester United Legends game. Yet the TV goes on every single week, and nobody bothers to fix it. There's another one hanging off its bracket, and it's now sideways. Just wee daft things like that could be sorted out, no problem. Who is looking after this kind of stuff? I mean, if I'm in charge at Celtic, I'm walking around because somebody isn't doing their job, and I'm walking around to make sure that the place looks clean, and the aesthetic looks better. And then you're starting to look at what we can improve before you get on to rebuilding the main stand. Ian, we should be proud of our stadium. It's fallen to bits. It's an embarrassment. I'm not sure if Ian can hear us. There you can.
Neglect. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Oh, good, mate.
Sorry, there seems to be gremlins about this time for some reason. I've got you back now. It's the physical manifestation of the neglect. The neglect's been going on around the club in terms of the boardroom, and that we keep talking about the refreshment and things like that. But this is the physical example of the inactivity and what the board should have been doing. We haven't got an operations and maintenance department. I'm sure this should be done in routine maintenance all the time. It should be going on all the time. There's that old kind of adage about the fourth row bridge. Getting painted. You start at one end and you got to go back. I'm not sure how true that is, but the example is a just one, really. This is a stadium that's used most of the year. There's a massive footfall through it all the time, and I can't imagine. I don't know when the last routine maintenance was done. I took a friend actually to the Legends game. He's an Olympiacos fan, Yorgos Lourmas, my mate, who I used to work with in New Zealand, and I took him to the game, and he's a massive football nut, and he was desperate to come to. He was calling it the Cathedral of Celtic Park, and I was a bit embarrassed to show him. Obviously, the stadium was mostly empty at night, and he was complimentary with the stadium. He wasn't going to sort of diss it with me being there, but he said, "Oh, I can see." He's looking at the sort of the rafters and things like that, and you can see that there's been no attention to it for a long, long time.
Ian's signal is breaking up a wee bit there. So, Ian, I'll let you reset your system, mate, and come back to us. Lawrence, you got something to add?
Yeah, you talked about business plan and kind of the three things: keeping our best player, communication, and upkeep of the stadium.
This is 1991.
They were on every business plan constantly.
Yep.
Those should never change. This is a weird thing, It's not like we need to get to a bad bit and go, actually, we're not doing these again. Partly Michael Nicholson has it up on the board. Communication. is the one thing in his board, communication with the fans. You're going, well, there's another two things to add, Michael. Got to make the stadium at least look nice, you know, and the quality of players. If it wasn't enough, the manager and the captain telling you all through the summer, surely at some point you've got to come out and address and make some kind of response. So it's a bit of a surprise, you know, that we've had things like, oh, we'll build a museum, we'll build a hotel, we get stuff passed and it just lapses. We don't do anything with it. You know, you don't want to make that a one day, a fortnight asset. You want to put it to such a level that it's a 7 day a week asset. I think you're making money 7 days a week. If 10,000 seats gives us an advantage, what would the hotel and museum and making a 7 day a week asset do? From the outside, you know, you're going there to watch the league flag get unfurled and half the banners are missing. It's, you know, at what point do they think this is good? The Champions League, whether we like the board or not, we know they turn up for that. What do they think year after year walking by a big media tent in the car park because the stadium's not fit for Champions League? You know, it doesn't have the facilities, the standard facilities. We're having to bring in extra capacity in the form of a marquee. I thought we left marquees to other clubs in Glasgow. You know, it's not something we should be doing year on year. And, you know, Liam talked about the plans. Part of the thing is, yeah, Celtic fans didn't have the money, but Fergus had a plan. I'm going to speak to a bank, and this is how you can buy shares from as little as 600 quid. I'll put together a package where you can pay them up. And maybe it's something, you know, the Celtic Trust, or is it Celtic Supporters Limited, should be looking at. Because if you really want a voice, you know, both of them have said we've got to get at least 5% shareholding. Well, why don't you put up? It's not just about shares that are out there that aren't getting used. Put together a package for fans that maybe weren't there, didn't have that opportunity. Speak to a financial institution, come together with a package and say, look, this is how you can buy Celtic shares. Put the target there. Say, look, it's not just about reactivating old shares. Here's another way we can do it. Hopefully, you know, it would help them get to their target quicker. But on the stadium, mate, it's just, I mean, that interview you done with Tom Grant, and I don't know if it was widely known at the time, that build that Fergus done was only part one. There was a part two plan where we need to make it look aesthetically better. We need to improve the facilities. Yeah. You know, all that kind of sheeting and, you know, the UPVC windows, a lot of that could be bigger, you know, wraparound glass at times. I don't know what part two was. Maybe Tom will come on and tell us and say, well, look, this is actually what was planned. And I don't see the reason why it's not been done now. Can't be a lack of cash. We know that for certain. You know, we've got the cash. You know, if they don't want to invest it, you know, in rebuilding the main stand, and the hotel, the museum, the team, surely, you know, look after what you've got and make it, I don't know, that phrase they like, world class.
Well, the big thing is, Lawrence, with regards to this, and we've opened up on this subject, is because we're talking about what can be done. And, you know, Liam was talking about being an agitator and continually agitating the board, etc. Yeah, they're in a much better position in terms of this, because I actually think they just think, you know what, we're just going to sit this out, guys. You know, a few people might not buy the European package, but we're just going to sit this out and we'll win a few games and everything will be rosy. And I honestly think that's their attitude. I don't think they've got a proactive attitude to this, whereby it's like, right, this is not good. Someone in the room has to be able to say, actually, guys, this is an echo chamber. This isn't good. And we're going to have to change it. Because at the moment, that's the sense that I get. So you can embarrass them into it as well. I used to hate it when people would look at certain aspects of the Celtic Stadium and criticise them from the outside. And now Celtic fans are doing it because it's getting to that point where you cannot ignore it. When I was saying it, when I was doing the Wander Round Paradise, a lot of people say, oh, you know, this is our football club. Stop having a dig at the football. You're looking for excuses to have a dig. And I'm thinking, no, I mean, I'm walking around and I'm seeing like power boxes lying wide open and all this kind of stuff. It was absolutely disgusting, actually, to look at the football club and the state of Paradise. We're going to be doing next week a special on this subject. We're going to be speaking to people about the stadium, a wee bit of the history around how the stadium got to where it was under Fergus and what's happened since and what has to happen moving forward. We talk about, you know, in the last 2 years, I think we paid corporation tax of £20 million to the taxman, 20 million quid. Now, obviously, It's not a case of, oh, you could have spent that £20 million, but if you spent more of your profit, you would obviously pay less in corporation tax. So why are we not investing it in the stadium? You're talking about the panels. I remember recently on social media sharing a post. It was the LA Raiders stadium, and they've got media mesh right round the front of their stadium so that they're constantly celebrating the history of their club. They're constantly advertising stuff on this media mesh. You look at ours, old stinking banners that are falling to bits. It truly is an embarrassment. I've started off positive, and positive is where I will continue. But Liam, it needs to be called out. And if the Celtic fans are doing it constantly and embarrassing the board into this as well, it really shows how lazy and complacent the board have become.
But the thing is, it also shows how long this has been going, because when you're talking about Walk Around Paradise, that's only a year or two ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
2 decades before that, my dad and I were working at Celtic Park, and we could see then they were already, I mean, that was only, less than 10 years after the stadium had been rebuilt, and it was clear that there was issues even then. The South Stand not having hot water, broken tellies, the lack of facilities in various bits of the stadium. The toilets were always absolutely clatty, no matter when or where you went in. That's a good word I don't get to use often enough these days in Japan.
Clarty. What is the Japanese equivalent of clarty? We need to know.
Kurate, maybe, I don't know. Oh dear, that sounded kind of racist, didn't it? I'm going to get in trouble with the wife for that one. No, but the thing is that even going back to like the early 2000s, these issues were there, and they've only got worse because clearly nothing's been done about them since then. We're talking about the same things here. We're talking about it nearly 20 years apart, and that's an indictment on everybody who's been at the club or overseeing the club since then.
Yeah, without a doubt. And we know, Liam, that you are not racist. You live in Japan and you have a Japanese wife. McLaughlin P.
For the time being, anyway.
Does she watch Acsom? They think.
Yes, she does.
Good. They think they're doing an excellent job. McLaughlin P's nailed this. I'm going to come to you, Ian, and hopefully everything's settled down at your end as well, mate. They actually think they're doing an excellent job, and we're a bunch of spoiled brats. And that is one of the biggest issues. We are on completely different frequencies, the fan base and the board. And obviously, when you do something like fan action, protests, etc., you find that a lot of the apologists do come out and force. I actually think a lot of them are AI or bots because they've never used their accounts since the COVID season, and all of a sudden they start to jump to the defence of the board. But they are completely on a different page here, and that's the point McLaughlin P makes.
Well, I mean, who was the CEO before Michael Nicholson? I can't remember. Well, obviously Don Mackay, but before that, there was quite a few. Peter, yeah, exactly. It was Peter Lawwell. So all this routine maintenance.
Who said Pistol Pete? Dear me, is that his nickname?
It was actually on his watch. So a lot of this routine maintenance, this decaying, allowing the stadium to decay, was on his watch. So sorry, Pete, you can't get out of that one. This should have been done, but
sorry, mate, that signal is failing slightly. But
I think you can get Tom Grant back on and tell us what exactly the plans were.
You know what? Tom might have them. Lord, Tom is an archivist. He might actually have the plans, because what he did is he documented his time at Celtic by taking photographs. He's got an incredible collection of largely unseen photographs. I know some of them were published online a couple of years ago, and it was all around the ground being regenerated, obviously, under Fergus, and he documented it. He was an amateur photographer, and he documented it. So Tom Grant, it would not surprise me, right? What he's also kept, Lawrence, right, is minutes from board meetings, because when he first came onto the board, he was the young guy that made the team, took the minutes, and he kept them all, right? He's got them all. I'd love to read through them.
I think it'd be brilliant to see, look, this is what the concourses were meant to look like. This is how we envisaged stage 2. And then we kind of look and get a picture of what they're like now and go, right, since, 96, what's changed? Nothing. I remember there was a couple of developments in the Rangers end when they opened the Champions Club. If you you paid, I think, can't remember how much it was to get into the season, but there could be more of that. There's so much space within that they could be capturing to improve the everyday fans' match going experience. And it's kind of sad that they think it's good enough. They obviously go on the European away joints. They'll know what a standard is, and they're thinking not to have improved in almost 30 years. In reality, outside of the disco lights, what we're looking at, and improvements that we can see.
Well, the thing is, it's a lot of it is just kind of routine maintenance, things that has to be done. But with regards to what we're talking about, these things have been, as Liam says, they've been required for a long time now. James McKeown is a massive supporter of the Celtic board, actually, when you look through the comments that we get from you, James. Any football chat, this is football chat. I don't know if you're talking about football on the park, but this is part of it. This is part of it. So let's not ignore it. Let's not ignore the deficiencies of the Celtic board when they're quite happy to take all the glory, as if they scored hat-tricks in all the cup finals that were won since Peter Lawwell and Dermot Desmond that have been involved with the football club.
Listen, it's not about saying that Dermot's terrible, the time's been terrible. We've acknowledged time and again that, we've been the dominant force in Scotland, and, is he preferable to American company?
It's no excuse. It's no excuse. It's no excuse.
What we're saying is,
stadium.
Here's things that could be better. Here's things that could be better. There's nothing wrong with going, here's some basic things we should be doing, communicating with fans, keeping it. Listen, it's not just about upkeep. You want to improve it, don't you? So it's, no one's immune from criticism. And some really basic things are happening. Those banners lying by shipping containers. The shipping containers look terrible for starters.
Yeah, they do.
If we really do need some kind of storage, what about building a storage building at that end? Maybe putting some toilets for use in match day, because you get to the game, until you're in the stadium, you can't get used to a toilet. There's some really basic things that they could do that would just improve match day experience.
Big thing,
outside catering units, they could make them.
Well, fan
zones.
There's so much they could do with that. But Lawrence, the point you make there about success, that is no excuse. And in actual 100%. Fact, that makes it worse, because you're in a comfortable position, because you're successful. It's not as though you're one of many clubs in Scotland, right, who are living week to week, hand to mouth, where you can't actually plan improvements because, you're skint most of the time. You've got clubs in Scotland who are barely surviving, right? Celtic, because of all the success and because they sell a lot of season tickets and because of the brand deals and the global fan base, are in a fantastic position to make sure that every single aspect of the club is run properly and is what they called at one point appreciated. Let's stop looking for excuses. The board have been treating the Celtic support with contempt for many, many seasons. There has been a tipping point, James, and the tipping point is when 450 plus Celtic groups, associations, CSCs, affiliations from all over the world and representing tens of thousands of Celtic fans agree that there is a vote of no confidence in the current Celtic board. We ask the club in an open letter 7 simple questions, and the club refuses to speak. I'll ask you this, James. Is that acceptable? In the modern day, and days gone by, it's never been acceptable. Never mind just with a football club, but in any walk of life, people would walk away from that. But because the board, for me, don't represent Celtic Football Club in itself will always be there. That board will move on. We've had boards of directors in the past. They will move on. I'm going to say we are going to be talking about some of the stuff on the park. Obviously, there is also talk around the silent protests at the weekend and coming up against Braga. But before I do all that, on this day, 81 years ago, Jinky, wee Jimmy Johnstone was born. 81 years ago. And obviously his statue adorns the front of Celtic Park at the top of the Celtic Way. And on today of all days, we should remember the wee man, an absolute genius, voted as Celtic's greatest ever player, Jay Conley, Jay Larkin. Afternoon Jungle, talking to Jungle Lion. Perhaps the next escalation will include a call to boycott merchandise. See, the thing with that, I'm going to, Jay Conley, Jay Larkin comments on a daily basis, and it's always a pleasure to engage with you. What I'm going to say though, right, see if Celtic fans got to that point, right, I want to know your views and let me know in the comment section. If it was to harm the club financially, right, or if it was to harm the club by there not being enough fans in the ground to create what we call the 12th man, the Celtic atmosphere, the fan base in the stadium, the board would only turn around and blame the fans. Liam, that's what they would do. They would blame, they would fight, they would turn that round, and their angle would be, look what yous have done, yous have damaged the club.
They're already trying to do that.
Yeah.
They are already trying to do that. If you look at some of the feedback from the weekend, there is this, certain people in the media who we know are friendly to the board have been putting around the idea that, very subtly, but they've been trying to plant the seed of the idea that this silent protest, which remember was only 12 minutes of a 90-minute game, somehow contributed to Celtic failing to win. That is already a narrative that's being put around out there. So anytime we don't win a game convincingly, it's going to be blamed on whatever protests we have at the game that day. And people are going to say it's unsettling the team and whatever. And no, I don't buy that. And I certainly don't think that most fans are stupid enough to buy that. But the board do. That's the sad thing. I genuinely think they are so disconnected from the daily realities of the average Celtic fan that they think we are that stupid, that we're going to fall for that. That's why they went quiet on the merch for about 10 days, and suddenly, boom, there's all your Henrik Larsson merch today.
We've released more lines of merch than we've scored goals this season.
Not a word about Jinky today.
Well, that's the thing.
They'll
exactly.
contact you when they've got something to sell you.
This is an issue. This is a big issue. I'm really keen to hear everybody's thoughts coming in here. We've got a big game on Thursday night as well. Heavy vibes. Time's up for the board. Hail, hail, boys. Let the people sing. Let the board hear. Yeah, I mean, no matter what you do in terms of action, people will have their views on it. Not everyone's going to agree.
Look, listen, for me, I'd rather do the merch than stuff in the stadium. I think it has some effect on the players. But, if the board wanted to turn it around, results in the park, guess what is a bigger effect? Selling Ida, Kyogo and Kuhn and not replacing them in time.
Precisely.
Taking that amount of goals out of a team. And it's not for the want of money. And it's not for the want of targets being identified. Somebody at the club hasn't been able to get the deals over the line. Surely, they're having some kind of review. See, even if they come out and say, look, we're going to have a review of this, we understand that this is unacceptable for the manager, the teams and the fans to be left in this situation. It would go a long way. But just the silence, of none is really see here. And if there was, we wouldn't tell you about it anyway. It's kind of like, it's just a dismissive nature. But for me, I would rather do as a collective kind of fans going to Adidas and say, look, we're going to boycott all Adidas merchandise between now and January, the end of the January window. Have a word with Celtic. We'll start buying again.
Well, it's one of the things that, in all honesty, I think when it comes to boycotts, Liam hit the nail on the head for me. We knew what the outcome would be. And the outcome at that time was because Celtic were into the tune of £5 to £6 million to the Bank of Scotland at the time, into an overdraft. We had strengthened the club like never before. Liam Brady had been given millions to spend, and we didn't spend it very wisely, and we found ourselves in debt. And what actually happened there was we knew that in order to be a going concern, we had to get X amount through the turnstiles at home game, because at that time, Celtic didn't have the money up front. So we're in a great position now as a board, if you think about it, right? Because we've got the money up front from the season tickets. And if you don't come to the game, what you're losing is your average spend per person at the game. But you've already got the ticket money. And then, what then happened was there was an instant reaction to that. And the reaction was that the bank were going to call in the debt. And they did call in the debt. And the fans that organised that knew it. And interestingly enough, in this footage that I'm releasing on Friday night, and please go and watch it. It's going to be on the YouTube channel, part 3 of Saving Ourselves. Terry Cassidy actually says, and there's almost a gasp in the audience, guys. There's 300 people at this live event. And Terry Cassidy says, we could be in a situation where the amount of people coming through the door doesn't pay the bills week to week. And he was talking about the club ceasing to exist, right? So if we boycott something now, it will just make things slightly more uncomfortable for the board rather than an end game. It would still be, for me, Lawrence, it would still be something that is a protest, not the thing that makes the change.
Oh, I think you're right, but I think Adidas deal's worth about 30 million quid. I think them going to them and saying, look, there's 30 million quid on it.
Also, mate, sorry to butt in, they're pretty comfortable with Adidas because the deal's 10 years, you know, it's a 10-year deal.
Yeah, but them going to use a sponsor and saying, look, we've got problems, we can't sell the merch. There's 30 million deal, it's a 10-year deal. What are you going to do? I think they would at least have dialogue with Adidas. You know, but we're not asking the earth here. You know, basic communication with us, improve the stadium, invest in a team should be part of a business plan. You know, we're looking for some acknowledgement that something's went wrong. You know, as far as we know, everything's went right from Celtic, you know, because there's no acknowledgement that anything's went wrong. So I think they don't have to give a lot, but the fact they're willing just to not give anything, to remain silent.
That is the significance of the silent protest. You know, that's what that cannot be lost. The uncomfortable silence at a football game, the uncomfortable silence that the boards have basically given to the fans since the open letter is going to be mirrored by the silence of the fans at the game. Not my decision. Obviously, this is a very democratic process that goes through a steering group that's been set up called the Celtic Fans Collective. So that was a decision that was made after many meetings and votes, etc., and suggestions. But what we also need to be aware of is this is a group at ground zero with no money, no budget, and things like visual protests cost a lot of money. When you think about what our ultras have done over the years, the incredible tifos, etc., the planning, the time, and the money that goes into that is incredible. And I think we don't see that. We don't really appreciate that. So we can't do visual protest every single week. What we can do, obviously, is we can make other types of protests. This is one of them. It's been announced. It will happen. A lot of people are saying, well, we reel that in and not do it. There's been a lot of flack coming the collective's way. Jungle Lion, poor old Henrik, brought into this mess. Board are completely deaf, blind to everything. Yeah, I mean, the merch could be absolutely stunning, Jungle Line, but I've not even really paid much attention to that. I was just thinking, seriously. Now, I know these things are all diaried and scheduled and everything else, and there's certain little silos and departments that are working and, you know, they're just getting on with their job. I get all that kind of thing, but it comes across as tone deaf. And I think that in relation to where the board are, where the fans are, I've said it before, I've said it again, organise a meeting, start communicating with fans better. I've used examples of a football club just 10 minutes up the road there who are tiny in comparison to Celtic, who are organising a fans forum in person with anyone who wishes to go. And it's with the CEO, the manager and the chairman. And imagine having that kind of level of access, not just for fan media, but for season ticket holders, shareholders, casual supporters to actually find out more about the inner workings of the football club. So we're going to be looking ahead to the Braga game, Liam. I'm going to come to you. We are where we are. We're not happy that we're not in the Champions League, but I think we need to make as good a fist as we possibly can of the Europa League campaign. And we come up against Braga on Thursday night. A couple of things I want to ask you. First of all, Dyson Maeda, does he start on the right wing?
Yes, he does, because you start your best team, and at the moment he'd be our best option there. But if he shows like he did last week and he gets hooked at half time again, then I think the question has to be asked, does he start from there on in? I think he's at a point now where he needs to prove that he's still deserving of that place. And look, I love Dyson, and I'm not going to blame him at all for what's happened, but it's clear the boy's head's been rattled by all of this. It's very clear. You know, the Japanese are good at putting on that stoic attitude, but nah, I'm not. Sorry, Dyson, nobody's buying it, mate. We can see that this has affected you, and it's not your fault. It's not your fault at all, but it is affecting the team.
No, it is. And the point I've got in relation to him playing on the right is that he's not going to get a game on the left while Tuneke is in that kind of form. I agree with Lawrence in respect of Iheanacho. I wouldn't have taken him off actually at the weekend, but he's not 100% yet, Lawrence Iheanacho, right? And that's fine and that's understandable. I do disagree slightly with you, although I know why you've said it. You don't think he's going to be prolific because he hasn't really been a prolific goal scorer. I disagree.
That's the worry. I'm not too sure if he will. It's a worry for me that he's not.
I'm going to say he will. I'm going to say he will, right? I'm going to basically make a prediction right now and say that he will score 20 goals this season for Celtic. And I think that's prolific. Now, I know we've had goal scorers who have scored 30 plus, 40 plus, and even the great man whose merchandise range dropped today scored more than 50.
So prolific
to say 20 plus.
Either was prolific.
For the minutes he played, it was prolific.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? I think 20 goals is probably minimum we should be looking for a Celtic striker.
Will Iheanacho get it? Give me a prediction, Lawrence. Will he get 20?
So 10 games in, what's he got?
He's got a couple of goals already.
I think he'll make around about 20 mark, 2022. I think that's what he's going to deliver.
And that's fine. That's fine if you've got 2 or 3 guys like we did last season. Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Right, so here we go. Danny Boy, you're on the YouTube. We have 1,800 plus watching live. Astonishing numbers. People are unhappy. They want to come on and vent. This is the place to do it. You don't have to agree with us, but we won't fall out with you, all right? We're not like the Celtic board saying this is it. It's our way or the highway. We are open to dialogue, open to ideas. James McKeown comments on a daily basis. I'm not having a dig at you, James. I like the dialogue. I like the discourse. Keep it coming. Danny Boy, do fans honestly believe they can do anything that would damage this board or to force them to do a U-turn? No chance. The more the fans protest, the deeper the board will dig in. I think... Sorry, Lawrence, on you go.
See, to be honest, it's not a U-turn that's needed. There's a lot that's good about the club. So we're not saying, do you know what? Yous are absolutely useless. We're saying, here's a couple of areas that should be glaringly obvious that we can improve on. Could we maybe improve on those? The thing about the stadium, geez, that's I mean, that's looking after your asset.
You need a plan just for the stadium upkeep and improvement. You need a plan just for that. Absolutely.
100%. We communicate with the fans. We had a museum plan. We had a hotel plan. They've lapsed. Any communication to the fan about it lapsing, or do we just know it's lapsed?
I'm going to jump in, mate. I was, for my sins this morning, because I was looking at some of the voiceovers for this video on Friday. I was looking back. You remember Cambuslang? Remember?
Cambuslang, yeah.
The Field of Dreams.
Down near the old Tuber.
The Field of Dreams, right? I was looking back at that, and the list of things that they had planned, it wasn't just the football stadium, it was the footprint. And part of that was the museum. We've been talking about this museum since 1992, Lawrence. And yet we still don't have one. It's a disgrace. Celtic Football Club, in terms of the illustrious history, we dine off it as a football club. We dine off the history. We dine off the Lisbon Lions and the Celtic greats. We need to have a museum. It needs to be part of the stadium tour. It needs to be something that people who visit Celtic Park, and believe me, there are visitors to Celtic Park from all over the world every single day. And they would love on a non-match day to go and visit things like that. The hotel, you think about even if you just go back to the 60s, when you're looking at a travelling support, coming to Celtic Park, right, and flying over and travelling on the boats and everything else to come to Celtic Park to watch Celtic play, right? And the amount of them. I remember being in the city centre for the Inter Milan game under Ronnie Dyler. Remember the one where Craig Gordon messes up? And being in this hotel, and it was full of the Irish fans that have come over, and they're staying in this hotel, giving this random hotel their money to stay in, Lawrence. That could be the Celtic hotel, on the footprint of the stadium. These kind of things are simple. They really are simple because they're going to work. It's not a big risk. Yeah, there's an outlay, of course there is, but it's not a massive risk. You know that it is going to create more income for Celtic.
Even, the fan zones, somewhere to sit outside the stadium. You could have units that are there surrounded by, inside and outside seating, and you give the season away sponsorship. Guinness going to sponsor this one this season. This is what's up for grabs. You know, move on next season, whatever. But it's there. It'd be something for fans. People going to a music venue, maybe remember we're going to put concerts on again. Not happened a while, but geez, they'd be used then as well. Oh, yeah. Wait a minute, we've got international events across the road. Oh, they maybe use them then as well. You know, it's not things that you're just saying just for match day. Make the whole package more appealing.
Absolutely, and it's a lucrative way of looking at income streams for the football club. Gordon, Coney, always great to see you on the chat. The continued silence from the board tells us more than any AI statement. The facts out, we are nothing more than a cash generator to them. They don't care about the success of the club, only the money. Well, I'll tell you something, and I'm going to throw this one out at you guys, right? Feel free to scoff and gnash your teeth at this one. But 2026, Liam, is 40 years since Love Street. And some of the incredible imagery of that day comes flooding back to me every time I think about it or talk about it. And one of the best images is the two Hearts fans crying. And every time I get stick online from Jambos, I've just got to post that picture. One of them's got like a, I don't know what you call that hairdo. It looks like Wolverine, right? It's got one of them, right? Flock of Seagulls, I think, had something similar. And it's the two Jambos with a silver away strip crying into their scarves because they lost the league on the last day. They finished second.
So you want Jambo tears coloured away strip for next season? That's what you're telling me.
It's not a bad idea. Aye, lime and silver. Aye, I wouldn't put that past them. Don't mention that again. They finished second in 86, 40 years ago. Can they finish second again? That's the question there.
I tell you what, they've got a chance of challenging for the title the way things are going now.
You think?
This is the dangerous thing with Hearts, right? That Tony Bloom is a gambler. Guy loves a punt. He's known for it. If we get to a point in January where we are, let's say, 5 or 6 points ahead of them, but we've not been that convincing, which is where I think we'll probably end up. We're going to win the league, but we're not going to run away with it. And I think Rangers will be doing well to finish in the top 6 the way they're playing. But, you know, assuming that Hearts are still in contention in January, Bloom is the sort of guy to think, do you know what, see if I chucked another 10, 15 million at this, I could have a chance. Whereas our board, they're going to think, we're 6 points clear, we'll get enough to get it over the line. There's your 300,000, development signing and a couple of loans.
It's a good point.
That's
how easy is it?
It's the complacency.
To do that? You know, the financial fair play, how easy is it for him to do that?
He'll find a way. I mean, they always find a way, whether it's loan players from other clubs that he's got investments in or whatever. These guys with money find a way of doing it. So
they can offset it across 3 years, 3 seasons long. So maybe the big spend happens now to get them into that. Because what I think he's looking at, and what I think clubs like Hearts should be looking at, is Champions League. You come second, yeah, albeit there's going to be a very difficult route. There's going to be a very so yeah, winning the league would be great. Winning the league would be great for any club outside of Celtic Park, right? I get it. But if you want to look at the financial element, come second and make your effort to get into the Champions League, because that is the genuine game changer when it comes to Scottish football. Barry Flaherty.
I think they'll stick on for second. I think Hearts will stick on for second. Without a doubt. You know, dodgy free kick leads to a corner, leads to, an injury time winner. Apart from that, it'd be another week without a win for the new club. So I think Hearts will stick on. I think they've got a plan to invest anyway in the next transfer window. They don't have, the European games clocking things up. I think they'll be stick on.
Can I throw a spanner in that? Because I don't disagree with you, Lawrence, but I see the spanner being McInnes. I think he's going to be the spanner. And what I mean by that is, okay, they've beaten Livingston and they beat Hibs, right? Rangers I'm talking about. I still think Russell Martin will be gone by the end of the season, maybe even by January. And I think one of the guys who's going to be on a shortlist will be Derek McInnes. And if that happens, that's going to be the biggest issue that Hearts are going to face this season, I believe.
Yeah, and I think Bloom's the kind of guy that would, if Hearts are riding high in second, he'd be kind of go, you think so? Take my manager? I think he would then go out and get a better manager. Because he's only gambling for half a season then. you know, if they're in second position or first position at turn of the year, he'd be gambling for half a season.
Yeah. No, it's interesting times. I'll tell you that much. Barry, you're back in. Manage decline, you say. Why though? Why would you manage the decline? I mean, David Lowe spoke about it when we discussed this on This Is Acsom the other week. He says that Dermot Desmond has this habit of leading Celtic up and bringing them right back down again. And he goes right back to Seville, leading us up the hill, bringing us back down. He called him the Grand Old Duke of Cork. He took us up, brought us back down. And then he's done it a few times again. But why would you do that? Why wouldn't you get to the top of the hill and say, right, let's build it even further? I don't understand why. Are they always looking? I'm not disagreeing with you, Barry. I'm just trying to understand it. Are they always looking at Celtic and thinking, right, there's only so far we can go in Scottish football? Well, yeah, domestically there is. My argument to that, though, would be that if you look at last season and you look at the fact that we've got 10 games in Champions League, that should be your target every season. You're not always going to reach it, but imagine you were genuinely, approaching that as a goal, because we didn't approach it. For me, we didn't approach it this season as a goal. We were complacent. We just thought, look, we'll deal with that after Kairat. We sold one of our best players before the Kairat games. Absolutely dreadful preparation for those games, albeit, yeah, we still should have come through and won the game. That's absolutely fine, but put us in the best possible position to do so. Mo Shislak going round in circles. I'm not sure if it's us or the club, but I take your point. Sligo boy, board has made banners for Thursday. Blame the fans. Probably. They'll have a wee WhatsApp group, Sligo, I'm sure. Maestro 95, JP, do you think the silence is having an effect on the board? Right. Well, some of the comments say that it will have an effect on the players. And I'm not going to dispute that. I've asked players, does this have an effect on you? And they've said no. Right, that's just maybe an individual thing. Over the piece, I think what's being used to say that there is an effect is non-attended games during COVID. I get that as well. I get that. I get how teams could probably benefit from having no fans at games and how other clubs would suffer. And I think that was one element of what happened in COVID and what went wrong. And if it's going to affect the fans, though, if it's going to affect the players, rather, then I would say, yes, it will affect the board. Right now, we're talking performance with the players. Of course we are. But we're also talking performance that is being affected by the mood that the silence causes. So I think if you are affecting the board in any way and you are sending out that message and it is affecting them in any way and it's making them uncomfortable and they'll know that the cameras are going to constantly be on them, there is an effect, I believe. Whether or not it's a bigger effect or a lesser effect than the merchandise boycotts that you touched on earlier on, Lawrence, and you weren't telling anybody to go and boycott merchandise. Every fan supports the club in their own way. But yeah, I do think it will affect them. But it's a drip effect. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen after one 12-minute protest or two 12-minute protests. It's an ongoing campaign which could be stopped right now by the club organising a meeting, answering the 7 questions. Then saying this is how we're going to communicate with you moving forward, and then removing the rat that sold the story to the Sun, and then giving Brendan Rodgers a new contract. And all of a sudden, the mood lifts. If you do these simple things that are all your gifts to give, they have the power to do that. Flying Haggis, why don't you have a link on the Daily Show for contributions? I'm not sure. Do you mean to contribute to the show? Because what you can do is you can email us. There's an email address attached to the YouTube channel. It's my own personal email, pauljohndykes@gmail.com, or you can contact us through DM on the social media. Anything at all, Flying Haggis, send it our way. David Boyle, the board are sitting and waiting for the collective to trip themselves up, and in doing, splitting the fan base. The silent protest that started this. The next move really needs to be thought out. I think it's a moving target, David Boyle. I think that, what the guys and girls have done at the collective so far has been incredible in a short space of time. There was a unity created by the open letter. And I think that unity has to be built on, and we need to keep that momentum up. Some people will disagree with what happens and what the collective plans. But I think what's important is this is the long game, because it doesn't seem at the moment that the club are going to break ranks and break the silence. And I think that it's such a simple thing to do. It should happen today. It should happen before Thursday. And all of a sudden, the mood will completely change. I'm going to ask you first, Liam, give me your predicted 11 for Thursday night, and how do you think it's going to go?
Right. Casper in goals. Left back, I would actually go with Sirachi from the start.
Mm.
I think he's earned it. Centre backs, CCV and Scales. I would go with Donovan at right back. Midfield, this is where it gets a bit controversial again. One of my favourite players, but he's not been doing it recently. I think Hatate drops out. McGregor, Engels, and Nygren for me in the midfield. And then you've got Tunekte on the left, Dyson on the right, and Iheanacho up front.
Listen, I agree 100% with that lineup. And there's a few things I would mention on it. If there was a way of getting KT and Sirachi in the team, I would, because I'm a great believer in playing your best players, right, and finding a way. But there's no way I'm dropping Liam Scales. There's no way I'm doing it.
No.
And I don't think Sirachi can play further up. It's more of an attacking threat. But what was pointed out by Quinny yesterday is he's actually very good at defending. So you'd be giving up a wee bit of that. And when you look at the midfield, that is a midfielder play. I think Rio's played himself out of it. He might actually be unfit for the game, Liam. I don't know if that's been confirmed yet. Nygren's a very good ball carrier. I think we need that to break the lines. But I'll tell you something that I would do, and I don't know if you would do this, Liam. I would play Engels as the 6, and I'd play Callum as my number 8, but on the left. You know how we play the kind of 2 8s? I'd be playing Callum further up. I would.
Aye. He needs to be playing in a more advanced role. You remember, particularly the start of last season, the number of shots he had from outside the box and the goals that came from that. Yeah. We're missing a bit of that right now.
The shots from outside the box and the dinks over the top, I think he's going to have far more opportunity to do it if you play him further up. That's my take on it. What about the outcome before I go to Lawrence?
I think it'll be a tight game. We'll win 2-1.
2-1 Celtic. I'd be happy after 2 games with a win and a draw. I'm going to come to you, Lawrence. You've already heard the teams that both Liam and I would play. What's your starting 11?
I think the back 5 is just the same. I think 2 full-backs have absolutely earned it.
Why did you fancy Sirachi before you'd seen him kicking a ball so much?
Because there was a before I'd seen him. That was it.
Before you seen him playing for Celtic, you were saying KT should get dropped for the Rangers game and Sirachi should play.
No, it was after the Rangers game. I said, look, after that 15 minutes, I would have Sirachi starting. I thought what I saw him, he brought a lot more energy to the team. He wasn't match fit, but he looked stronger. KT, as well as not being able to complete the 90 minutes, he doesn't look strong. You know, there's a lot missing. And if it wasn't KT, we'd sign some other player from the Premiership. With that injury record, we're 10 games in, and he's the highest paid player, there'd be a lot more questions getting asked. But on Sirachi, start him. I think Donovan's been a revelation. I'm hoping he was only rested at the weekend. I don't think his performances merited him coming out of the team. The front 3, I don't think we've got any other choice. It was basically, your right wing. You're not going to play Forrest or Yang over Maida. It's what we have, and midfield's kind of what's up for grabs. Callum, although he's not having his best, I think he needs to play further forward. I'd start Bernardo, Callum, and probably Nygren just ahead of McKeown.
So you've got Bernardo as the 6.
Yeah.
Bernardo's
the 6.
Okay.
I think he's bigger. He seems to be a more physical player. I think Engels, his performances have been a wee bit out of sorts. Whether that's confidence, I don't know. But I think it would just suit Bernardo better. He carries the ball well. We're at home. He's physically imposing. He's got the goal threat. I'm not too sure that Engels carries as big a goal threat as Bernardo does. So, Bernardo 6, Callum, Nygren. And Nygren just ahead of McKeown, because I think he's not let us down. He's come on. He's creative. Yeah, he loses the ball now and again further forward, but it's because he's taking chances. He's trying to create or he's trying to score. And sometimes, we might all love, 70 or 80% possession, but see if it to drop to 60 and we're to end up 3-0, I would be more than happy.
I love winning. I love winning.
Yeah.
I don't get too bogged down on that if you win the game. And we need to get that edge back, I think, Lawrence. I'm just going to bring this up before I ask you for your prediction, Flying Haggis. I meant to contribute to the anti-board paraphernalia. Good point. Yeah, we will get links as soon as we possibly can, and we'll share them. And we'll share them on all the streams. So that's an excellent point. Thank you. What about your prediction for the game then, the outcome, Lawrence?
3-0. I'll go 3-0 Celtic.
I love you. I love it. Right. Thank you, every single one of you, for getting involved. We have been chatting, not always agreeing, but that's what it's all about for the last hour on all things Celtic. What do you think about the stadium? What do you think about our chances on Thursday night and the fact that the club remains silent on the open letter? Let us know in the comment section. Thanks again for tuning in. Always a pleasure. 2,000 strong. I hate turning it off when we've got 2,000 Celtic fans ready to get involved in the discussion. All that's left for me to say thank you to Ian, Lawrence and Leon for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.